did you discover ancestral healing?
Um, I was working with this young woman just several years into my practice, my shamanic healing practice. And I was doing a good solid diagnosing back in those days before I did anything. And no matter how I asked the question, the helping spirits just kept saying the root of her problem is her ancestors. And I did not know how to interpret that because I had been told by my shamanic teachers that the ancestors were this categorically good thing. So how could they be the root of this problem? So I didn't know how to interpret that sort of conceptually. All I knew how to do for this particular client was to ask the helping spirits to guide me what to do for her. And so I started getting more and more clients like that. And I just kind of fumbled through each time. When the one that really made me realize you have got to get a grip on this and start to make it be a system and understand what you're doing, because it's a thing. I don't care that all of your teachers tell you you're wrong, which they were. It's a thing, and you and your helping spirits need to figure it out. Okay, because this woman came to me. She came to me because she wanted help getting her own cycles, her own body cycling, sleeping, waking, her menstrual cycle, everything just put back online. She'd been doing really, high medical technology infertility treatments for 6 years. They still didn't have kids. They were like, fine, we're just going to adopt. I can't do this anymore, she said. I just need help getting my body back online. And so that was our goal, was to get her body back online. We ended up doing this amazing ancestral healing that ended up going back many generations to the source. And it was a man who was a very strong man. So back in the days when strength mattered because you worked on farms and things like that, that was a great asset. He was not very smart. She, the wife and the mother, was an extremely intelligent woman and basically made everything work for them. And they were very much in love. There was really nothing wrong other than the fact that sometimes he would have very bad days because he wasn't that smart and people took advantage of him. And sometimes, it was one of those days, one of those really, really awful days we can have. He comes home, she says something because he's had an awful day. He hears it a particular way, which was not her intent. And he loses it. He's angry, he hits her. She falls, she hits her head on a stone and dies. Totally accidental, totally just one of those, the most awful day of my life days, right? Their child was in the crib watching. And the child learned it's not safe here. Right? I mean, duh, right? The problem is, over the generations, that message that you're not safe here evolved from the women in the family getting less and less and less fertile until basically like the egg is saying, I'm not coming out, right? And that was the ancestral healing root of her infertility, which had no other physical reason. Like they could never figure out why these two people couldn't have babies. They were both physically fine, but they just could never conceive. And so we did that with her, and she could see a lot of patterns in her family in it, and she was very grateful for that. And I said, I don't exactly know how this is going to help you get your cycles back together, but this is what the spirit said. And then off she went. And I got a card 10 months later, right, with the picture of the child they just had. And at that point I went, all right, you have to figure this out. This is a thing. This is a real thing. It's one thing just dealing with the, frankly, illness and the icky stuff in people's life. It's another thing that this could bring this child into the lives of these two people that really want to be good parents. Like this, deal with this, Christine. Anyway, so that's the answer to your question, is I had to learn, and my helping spirits taught me. And then the whole thing got this bigger expression when I finally got people into the 4th year of my training. It took a long time for me, because I'm not Michael Harner, to get enough people through year 1 to do a 2, and enough people through 2 to do a 3, and enough people through 3 to actually do the 4th year. But the 4th year is training people to do this ancestral healing. And so over that time that I was learning with my clients, I was also understanding what one of the purposes of this 4th fourth year training was, which was to clear your own ancestral lines.
Right, right. So when we reconcile our ancestors' unresolved issues with them, things change for us.
Yes, things that, and this is the thing I want people to understand is, yes, that's the first reason, is because we don't want our lives hijacked, right? It's hard enough to just live your own life, and then you got to deal with this burden, right? So yeah, we want our own lives, get off my back, let me make my own mistakes, right? Yay. Okay. But we are not supposed to be doing this alone. The living are supposed to have the ancestors behind them, learning from their mistakes, to feel their hand at your back, really, really helping you go forward and not lose ground. This very contemporary idea, oh, it's always 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. That is only because we do not have a relationship with our ancestral helping spirits. If we had ancestral helping spirits, it would be 3 steps forward and then like, and they'd push you forward again. You would not lose ground. You would pause and freak out regularly, but you would not lose the kind of ground we do. And so this is the second piece. Okay, so we clear this man and this woman, right, from the story with the baby, right? We clear the man, the woman, and the baby, and we help them to cross over completely so they can now be invited back through ritual as an ancestral helping spirit. And I'm going like this because that spirit is going to come back, ideally put into some object that is going to be their place to live in our lives, and that we're going to create a shrine. We're going to put all those little objects for all these ancestors in a shrine, and we're going to wake up in the morning and open up that shrine and give them an offering and say good morning and thank you for my life. You know, please protect me. These are the things I need to do today. This is the help that I need. And then we go off and we do our day, and we come back at the end of the day and we say, thanks for that help. This and this happened. Isn't that amazing? And, you know, and so we start to build this relationship with our ancestral helping spirits. So we start getting help. We start recognizing we belong. I grew up in a small town. I had a beautiful childhood. I have 2 loving parents. I knew mostly that they loved me. Of course, you know, we had our own family dysfunction, but generally speaking, right, I got nothing to complain about. You know, white, middle class, good schools, nothing to complain about. I still never felt I belonged anywhere, ever, ever, until I ancestralized all 4 of my ancestral family lines. And immediately my belonging goes with me. No matter where I am, no matter who I'm with, I belong. Because our belonging isn't coming from the living people around us. It isn't coming from the land necessarily that we're on. Our belonging comes from the ancestors behind us. And then the next piece of the circle is the descendants in front of us, pulling our gifts out of us, because our ancestors prayed. We're the answer to those prayers. And those prayers need to be made manifest through our actions. So those things are here for those who are coming. That's how the circle is supposed to work. And so it is, yes, it is about us not having our lives hijacked by the dead and being able to not pass those energies on. But it's also about repairing what is the true cycle of life.
Right.
Getting humanity's peace back on track so we can then get back on track with all life around us. Because we have non-human ancestors. We're in terrible relationship as well.
Right.
You know, so we have a lot of repair of relationship to do. So that piece is really important.
Yeah, I think the thing that I'm learning in my own journey here is that it almost feels like we only think of ancestors as being just a few generations, the names that we actually know, that we can discover on Ancestry.com.
Mm-hmm.
But in actuality, we go back thousands and thousands, you know, for as long as humankind has been on Earth, and maybe even before then, who knows?
Exactly.
So it's sort of hard to believe logically, because especially if you didn't have a really good solid relationship with the ancestors that you do remember their names, that anybody gives a shit what happened.
Exactly.
What I've discovered by doing this work, I've been working with Daniel for, as you know, and I've seen massive changes in my life just having connected with, I'm just working on my mother's father's line right now, and just connecting with my grandpa's. Oh, wow, you wouldn't believe. I could fill another hour just telling you what's changed in my life. So I want to make sure that everybody knows there's that. But I also want to ask, we're talking about four main lineages. We've got the mother's mothers, the mother's father, the father's mother, and then the father's father. What about all those other ones that aren't in those direct four lineages?
Well, this is the way that I think about it, because that feeling you're talking about as you begin to heal the lines, that feeling. So one of the ways I would say it is I'm sitting at my ancestral shrine and I'm talking about what, I'm always about the work. I've got a student community, I got clients, I got me, my, all these things, right? And every once in a while they're like, shh, just lean in, just let us love you. Just like, shut up and let us love you. And then I'm just like weeping and realizing, there's so much love and support for us. They really don't want us repeating their mistakes. They really want us to hear their whispers like, I did that. Don't do that. I helped my father cross over, and I know what the issues were in his life. And when I'm working with people, when he steps forward to help me, I know exactly what their issues are because they're the issues he had. And he is like an expert on not doing what he did. And that's the other thing to realize. It's almost like the more awful these people are, the more powerful their help can be in terms of discerning how to not make a mess in contemporary life. Anyway, so what was your original question?
I don't know. I was babbling.
No. It was a good question.
Oh, it was about the more than just the four lineages. Right. All those other, there's thousands and thousands of ancestors.
Well, see, this is what I talk about with people. There is a really beautiful aspect in working with your ancestors is you do start to understand as you follow those lines. And you start working with the issues and what needs to be cleared, receiving the help from, like you said, all those many ancestors who are actually already ready to help us right now. You start realizing, wow, we are one family. Humanity is a family here on earth, and we all go back to the same people. And so there is that quality. So why do the lines matter? Okay, what I teach my students is that your bloodlines matter, both birth and birth and adopted. So you may end up with 8 bloodlines that matter, but your actual body's bloodlines matter because these are the things that will be most detrimental. In terms of spirit help, you can get spirit help, ancestral spirit help, from any lifetime you've ever lived. And I'm sorry for people that like your universe organized. We do not always incarnate in the same bloodlines. So if you get some, beautiful Scandinavian woman that comes to you and says, I'm here because I'm your ancestor, and you don't have any Scandinavian DNA, then she's an ancestral helping spirit from some other lifetime that you're not happening to incarnate in that bloodline this time. So the beauty of that is, once again, you've got more help than you have problem. So in essence, the bloodlines are the problem that we have the ability and the right to clear, and have them come as ancestral helping spirits. The other ancestral helping spirits are there to help. And my experience, to take that a step further, is the longer they've been ancestral helping spirits, the less distinct they are. And for me, there's, I talk about the luminous ones, because I feel like the ones that have been sort of ancestral helping spirits longer than they were people, like for generations and thousands and thousands, maybe tens of thousands of years, they've been proper ancestral helping spirits. They're just these luminous beings. You can't really tell what their line is anymore, and they're this enormous chorus, a whole sphere of these luminous beings that are here for everybody. At that point, going that far back, that long, being an ancestral helping spirit, that many, all the web of complexity of incarnations, that they are there, they are all there for us, and we need to all reach out to them and go to them. I don't know. Again, way more help than there is problems, although the problems are real and are, for many people, really life-threatening.
Let me ask you one last question. What vision do you see happening if we actually heal the ancestral lines?
If we, actually, I think about this a lot. There's several things. If we heal the ancestral lines, I believe our entire understanding of medicine would change around the globe. And all of this separation between allopathic care and indigenous medicine and, natural health care in between and all that would go away. We would understand it very, very differently. Our whole sense of why we suffer would completely change. So that would be one thing that would change. If I actually believe that we could clear the junk heap, this pile of unresolved, it is a finite amount of mess that humanity has created, and there's way more ancestral helping spirits to help us. And you don't necessarily have to heal them one at a time. And so, because people that are skilled can work on other people's lines for them, in other words. So there is this possible future in which we actually got all the ancestors back to where we belonged. And then we would have the ancestors behind us. We would be very conscious of those who are coming. And I believe that our lives would be contemporary lives, but they would function much more like shamanic lives and shamanic communities. I think it would change our understanding of our local community and our global sense of community, because we probably still have technology, but we would approach our life from a different fundamental understanding of life, because we would, through the process of working with these ancestors and healing the unresolved ancestors, come to understand all of those problematic beliefs that our ancestors believed that have gotten us to this place we are right now, where we are in wrong relationship with our environment, with the spirit world, with each other, all of this divisiveness. I believe we would have come to grow as a species through the healing necessary to literally grow out of that divisiveness through the healing that it would require to clear all that unresolved energy. And we could do it now. This isn't like, in 100 years, like 5. If people were skilled and doing it, like not even in a lifetime. And the important thing to understand is our children need us to do this. That we aren't means we are handing unresolved issues down without having bothered to stop it. And that is the worst inheritance to offer our children.
Thanks for listening. Check out Castle Gate, a novel based on my own ancestral healing journey at lisabonis.com. In 1921, 4 men set off from Scotland to the United States. Will Garrock, his brother Pete, his son Willie, and his nephew Thomas, all coal miners. They left behind the miners' rows and the nationwide mining strike with its soup kitchens. Their destination was Castlegate, Utah, where they had kin to welcome them before sending for their wives and children. They prospered in America, working in one of the finest mines in Utah. Until that tragic day, March 8th, 1924. Disaster struck. 3 explosions, trapping 171 men inside. Rescue crews worked tirelessly for days, but sadly, they could not save a soul. Women were widowed and children were orphaned, and some never recovered from their broken hearts. Castlegate is the true and tragic saga of a Scottish family whose dreams of finding their fortunes in the bountiful coal mines of Castlegate, Utah during the Prohibition era explode in one of the most devastating mine disasters in American history. Learn more at lisabonis.com.